Draft grades are far from a new concept on YouTube when it comes to NFL content. There's plenty of people out there who dedicate a channel to a specific team and will talk about each individual pick in depth, or they'll talk about the draft class at whole in depth. There's plenty of people out there who cover the league at large, such as myself, that will go division by division or conference by conference or talk about the draft in one big video. But you never see anybody talk about each individual team in their own draft grades video. All 32 teams, 32 videos. You never see that happen until now. Because I was disappointed with the pre-draft content I was able to put out, because as a college student, free time is a luxury that I don't always have, I have decided to make up for it by making 32 videos throughout the month of May, talking about my thoughts on all 32 teams' drafts. And I'm really excited to get into this. Keep in mind, as per usual with draft grades videos, I know that I'm going to be wrong on most of these, primarily because we haven't seen these guys play. We don't know how they're going to be developed, all of that good stuff. This is just my analysis based upon how I graded different players leading into the draft. You know, if I think a guy was overdrafted based on my evaluations, underdrafted, et cetera, et cetera. That's what these grades are based off of. I also don't think I'm better than any NFL GM out there. I'm just a 21-year-old college kid who spends the little free time he has watching film. So bear with me. People seem to like my opinions on this kind of stuff. I like sharing it, so I'm going to continue to do so. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the New York Football Giants and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. The Giants didn't make a ton of picks in this year's draft, only walking away with 6 selections. But I'll tell you right now, they made the most of those 6 picks. There really aren't any examples of a horrendous reach where I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering what the hell they're thinking. And this isn't a situation where it took those picks time to grow on me either. It was in the moment, you know, when I was watching it, whether I was live on YouTube, over on my podcast channel, Run the North, link in the description, cheap plug, whether or not I was live over there or, you know, I was sitting at home on day 3 just watching the draft in the background while working on different things, there wasn't a single pick that had me questioning what they were doing. Now, some picks did grow on me a little more as time went on, but it wasn't a situation of me going from, oh my god, what are you doing, to, okay, I see the vision. It was more, okay, that's a good pick, and then me thinking about it a little bit and being like, oh, that's a great pick. You know, my opinion of this class has only improved. And I'm not going to say it's the perfect draft, because there are some situations where I felt maybe there was a better player available or, you know, something of that nature. But this is about as close to perfect as you're going to get. And that, of course, starts off with Malik Nabers, the wide receiver out of LSU. And this is a perfect pick. There is not a single thing they could have done here that would have made me like this pick better. And I want to start out by addressing, you know, you see the graphic over there on the right side. Malik Nabers was my wide receiver 3. If you're familiar with this draft class at all, you know this is one of the better receiver draft classes we have seen since the turn of the century. I've been on this planet for 21 years, and I cannot think of a better or deeper wide receiver class in my lifetime. Granted, maybe there's something I'm forgetting in like 2006 when I was 3 years old and didn't know what a football was, but I digress. The point is, it was an incredible draft, and the top 3 guys being Nabers, Rome Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr., any one of them would have been the number 1 receiver in each of the last like 5 or 6 draft classes. But I love this pick for the Giants, and looking at it, you know, again, saying he's wide receiver 3, that's not slighting him. That's just me liking Rome Odunze a little bit more, because I think consensus Marvin Harrison Jr. was number 1. And then after that, it kind of became a pick your poison with Rome and Nabers. And the differences between them is more of a stylistic thing. And, you know, when I think of a number 1 receiver in the NFL, typically I lean more towards the prototypical X, you know, somebody that's going to be a ball winner downfield, really good route runner, really smart player. And that is more Odunze than it is Nabers. Nabers is more of your prototypical Z or even a slot, where he's not going to win contested catches downfield because he's just not as big or as strong. But what he lacks in mass and contested catch ability, he makes up for after the catch by being super fast and super crafty and super smart. That's the big difference between the two. And me personally, I tend to favor those that are of the bigger body variety. But the point here is calling Malik Nabers wide receiver 3 is not a shot at him by any means. And typically, if you've seen my other videos, if there's a guy on the board that I thought was better than a player taken at that same position or multiple guys or whatever, I will tell you outright. In this case, I do think Rome was better, but Nabers fits the Giants' offense better. He fits what Brian Daboll wants better. And that is somebody who, he doesn't stretch the field vertically as a lot of offenses do, or as a team that would want Rome Odunze would tend to do. He's more of somebody that's going to stretch the field horizontally. He wants somebody that's going to be able to take a 5-yard slant for 20 yards, somebody that's going to take a 2-yard drag for 15 yards. He wants guys like that, and Malik Nabers is the epitome of that. We also know as well, Brian Daboll loves Isaiah Hodgins, and that's going to be more of your Rome Odunze-esque player. Not saying he's as good as Odunze, obviously, but he already plays that role, and I'm sure Daboll would have much rather replaced... who did they lose? They lost Sterling Shepard, who kind of would have been their 3, but the point is, Nabers is going to take over as the top dog in this receiver room right away, and then you've got Darius Slayton as your 2. He's probably better suited as a 3, but I think you can get away with him as a 2. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson and Isaiah McKenzie as your gadget guys. You've got Jalen Hyatt, who can be a true deep threat for you. You've got Isaiah Hodgins to be that X. Then you've also got Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who I have to shout out because I loved him coming out of college. I know he probably won't make this roster, but a man can dream. Gotta go to bat for my guys. And the reason I talk about the receiver room as a whole is now you have that true number 1 that you didn't have, and that's going to make Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, whoever your quarterback ends up being by the end of next year, it's going to make their job a hell of a lot easier. You give them a true number 1 weapon that they can rely on, that teams are going to have to game plan around, and that's obviously going to open up your other pass catchers. So drafting Nabers was the right choice, obviously. There are some people who might bring up the quarterback position, maybe say you should have taken JJ McCarthy. I disagree. I think Nabers was exactly what they needed. You can worry about that quarterback later on, because I didn't think McCarthy was worth taking at 6. I definitely didn't think Michael Penix, who went at 8, was worth taking in the first round. I didn't think Bo Nix would have been worth taking this high. And with the top 3 quarterbacks off the board, it wouldn't have made sense to go quarterback here. So going Nabers is absolutely the right decision. And then in the second round, they take the safety out of Minnesota, Tyler Nuben. And I'll tell you up front, this is a guy that I had as my 3rd safety, and I did have 2 other safeties on the board rated higher than him. I liked Malik Mustafa and Javon Bullard a decent amount better. But if you're familiar with the safety class, this wasn't a great safety class. So the separation, the difference isn't that big. I do think Mustafa does a lot of the things that you're going to get out of Tyler Nuben better, and that's why I would have went that direction. Javon Bullard gives you something a little different. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Tyler Nuben is basically Xavier McKinney, like almost to a T. A big, smart safety who, big's relative, a 6-foot safety with good instincts, good field vision, that isn't super fast, isn't super athletic, and just plays smart football. And that is what you're getting out of Tyler Nuben. Ironically, my comp for him, I went back and forth between Xavier McKinney and who I ended up landing on being Marcus Williams, but I digress. The point is, I think the Nuben pick makes a ton of sense for them. Kind of taking a look at what Tyler Nuben does right. Like I said, he sees the field very well. He's going to anticipate routes pretty well. He's going to be able to, see stuff develop and then close on it underneath. Now, he does have to trigger on things, or it's a good thing he has that because it allows him to trigger on things quicker. That way, he doesn't have to rely solely on his speed to be able to, cut off a route, jump a route, whatever it is. He can trigger before the quarterback's even ready to throw and end up making a play because, again, he's not the fastest guy in the world. Very consistent tackler, long arms give him a pretty good tackle radius. Really good ball skills, not going to waste any opportunity to make a play on the ball. He's got good stopping power, so if he meets somebody in a hole, if he comes downhill and meets somebody in the hole, typically they're not going to get past him. But I can tell you right now, I say that, but Nuben isn't somebody that, when the crowd clears and you have that open lane, if you're a running back, you see Tyler Nuben, you're going to start quaking in your boots. You're not terrified of Tyler Nuben, but he is a player you have to respect in that regard, right? This isn't Jamal Adams or prime Jamal Adams, current Jamal Adams, different story. This isn't prime Jamal Adams. This isn't prime Derwin James. This isn't Troy Polamalu. This is like a Cam Curl, a Marcus Williams, somebody who you just have to respect in that regard. And that's good enough. You know, you're not looking for an enforcer for the role he's going to be playing. And also played 5 years in college. He's got a ton of snaps in his belt. He's just a smart player, has that experience. Again, not the fastest guy in the world. His first step, you know, when he finds something and triggers, that can be a little lacking. And that's just because of the lack of athletic tools. Pretty much all I have to say is he's not the most athletic guy in the world. And also, because of that athleticism deficiency, there's going to be times where he's chasing somebody down to the sideline, especially like quicker running backs or receivers on designed handoffs or pop passes or whatever, where he's going to take weird angles trying to overcompensate for that speed. And that's going to create problems for him. He's going to end up missing tackles, things like that. But that's very much something you can coach out of him with how smart of a player he is. So I like the pick. I think it's a good pick. Again, I personally would have preferred a guy like Malik Mustafa or Javon Bullard, but I at least see the vision. I don't think Nuben's a bad player by any means. Again, the safety, or at least relative to the safety class, this was not a great safety class, but I do think Tyler Nuben can be a starting caliber player throughout his career. And then in the third round, they stick in the secondary. They take Andrew Phillips, the corner out of Kentucky. And I love this pick. This is an awesome pick. He is going to be your long-term 2 opposite Deonte Banks, or at least that's what you're hoping. I think he can be, and I think Deonte Banks is a stellar number 1. Shout out to him. He might be my favorite player on the Giants. He is so good at what he does. I love that he is panning out so far. Obviously, he's a year into his career, but the future is very, very bright for him. But back to his new partner in crime and Andrew Phillips. This is a guy that getting him in the third round is pretty solid value. You know, finding a guy that can be a true starting number 2 opposite your number 1 you took in the first round last year. I love that. And as a player, he's somebody that is just going to be a pest. He's somebody that is always going to be in the receiver's hip pocket. He's quick enough to keep up with the fastest guys on the field. He's got great footwork. He's very quick to, you know, kind of reattach himself to a route like you see at the top of a zig or a slant or whatever when a receiver creates that little bit of separation. He's very quick to latch himself back on there. He's going to be able to play physical at the catch point, although he's not going to force many turnovers. In fact, I don't think he had a single interception in college, but he's somebody that is going to get his hand in there, knock the ball away. He's going to play physical at the catch point, make receivers drop passes, things like that. So he might not be taking the ball away, but he's going to do everything in his power to make sure the receiver can't get the ball. It's very much a, if I can't have it, you can't have it either type of situation. He's very, very physical in that regard. He's also physical throughout the route. He's going to do a great job of hand checking, you know, up until the ball is thrown. He's going to come down and try to play the run as well with that physicality, but unfortunately, he is an abysmal tackler. Had a 22.6% missed tackle rate in college because he likes to dip his head. That's something I typically despise in any player. Corner, I guess I can be a little bit more lenient with it, but dipping your head, I mean, that's just fundamentally incorrect, and you're not doing anything but putting yourself in harm's way. It's a wonder he hasn't gotten a serious injury yet, knock on wood, right? I'm not rooting for it by any means, but those coaches in New York got to tell him you cannot do that because you will hurt yourself, and that is terrible. I can't believe he didn't get that coached out of him at Kentucky, but I digress. Just got to get that figured out. And he's somebody, too, that rotates in and out of the slot, or at least did at Kentucky. I don't think you'll be doing that at the next level because of that tackling issue. Typically, you'd want a nickel corner to be able to tackle a little bit better. So we'll have to see. If they can get that sorted out, then absolutely. If he can learn how to tackle or at least keep his head up while tackling, which would help him tackle better, obviously, then he can be an inside-outside guy. For now, you got to deal with Cordell Flott in the slot. So I love the Phillips pick. I think that's great value, great player. Get yourself a true number 2 corner in the third round. Pretty damn good process. Then we go to the fourth round, and this is where the picks start to get a little risky, a little bit more banking on upside type of thing. But it's day 3. That's what the draft is for. So they're following correct process, taking Theo Johnson, the tight end out of Penn State. The reason this is an A- and not an A, I'll tell you up front, is because I think he's very similar to another tight end in this draft that I thought was better and was still on the board in Cade Stover out of Ohio State. But that being said, I do like Theo Johnson. I think Theo Johnson is somebody that, can be a good tight end too, has some good upside in that regard. Obviously, being a bigger dude, he's 6'6", I believe. Yeah, 6'6", 259, has the ability to be an inline blocker. Now, he's not a great inline blocker by any means, but he has the ability to, kind of develop in that regard. His technique just isn't there, but he's got the tenacity, he's got the aggression. But what really stands out about him is that athleticism. Put up a insane combine performance, had a 999 RAS score, had 3 years of starting in college. Very battle-tested player in that regard. Good body control, really good at going up and catching 50-50 balls because of his size and how much control he has over his body. Has converted on 6 of 9 of his career contested catches in that regard. Has 10 touchdowns the last 2 seasons, so he's going to be a red zone target as well. The big thing with me with Theo Johnson, the reason I liked Cade Stover better than him, is because, first of all, the technique as a blocker needs to improve dramatically. But also, the athleticism that's kind of his claim to fame didn't show up on tape as much. Now, I'm not saying he was a snail, but when you're watching him, you don't see a 999 RAS score. You see like an 8, which is still fine. But you see like a more tame version of what he did at the combine. And, I'm here to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he worked his ass off, and what he did at the combine is vindictive of what he's going to be for the rest of his career. And if that is the case, this is incredible. You got a great tight end to pair with Daniel Bellinger for the next however many years. I love Daniel Bellinger. Which obviously you need because you have Darren Waller, who we don't know what the hell's going on with his career, and he's more of a receiver than a tight end anyways. But, I need to see that before I can be like, oh my god, this pick, the Giants, you killed it. Right now I'm saying, okay, you took a swing on upside, that's great. I absolutely understand it. I just would have liked to have seen you take Cade Stover. That's basically what I'm saying with this grade. So if he can work on the technique, also his hands are pretty inconsistent, almost forgot about that. He needs to work on that, but concentration drops are probably one of the easier things to fix for a pass catcher. It's just getting them in the right mindset, and, easier said than done. I'm not saying it's a cakewalk, but, we have seen time and time again, players come into the league with a bunch of great traits and catching problems, and those catching problems going away after a couple years. So we'll have to see. There's a lot of development required to this pick. He's very much a project, but good upside. And I guess at worst, you're getting an aggressive tight end too. If you can't teach him the pass catching stuff, just teach him the run blocking technique, and you'll be solid. You'll have a nice tight end too, a good inline tight end. Then we move to the 5th round, and they selected another project in Tyrone Tracy, the running back out of Purdue. And this is another instance where I get it. I like the player. My big complaint, again, is there's someone that does a lot of what he does that was still on the board that I liked better, and that player is Dylan Laube, the running back out of New Hampshire, ended up going to the Raiders. So the reason I say that is because these are 2 running backs that are at their core pass catchers. These are running backs that you are going to use on 3rd down. They're primarily in your backfield to serve as your threat out of the backfield in the pass game. Sure, they can run the ball too. I'm not saying they can't, but you want them to catch the ball. That's where they make their money. And Dylan Laube is just a better version of what Tyrone Tracy brings to the field. And a big reason for that is because Tyrone Tracy's been playing running back for a much shorter amount of time. He is somebody that was actually playing wide receiver and then converted to running back. And that becomes incredibly apparent when you're running him between the tackles, because he's not going to break a ton of tackles, and also his lower body is still pretty slender, so he's not somebody that has excellent leg drive. He's not going to keep his legs churning and run through defenders or anything like that. He's going to get brought down on first contact quite a bit. Dylan Laube, he has more experience with it. He's no Derrick Henry, but he's able to break tackles a little bit more consistently. But enough about Laube. Let's focus on Tracy here. Has a great jump cut that he likes to use that ends up counteracting the ability to, or the need to break tackles, because he'll just, jump cut guys out of their shoes between the tackles. He's got good speed, can definitely, pull away on runs, accelerates pretty well. So he's got that home run ability. He's a really good pass catcher. Like I said, good hands, good route running ability, good vision in that regard. His vision as a ball carrier is continuing to improve. You've seen pretty linear growth in that regard throughout the tail end of his college career when he was actually playing running back. So that's definitely a good sign. Same thing with just like the overall feel for the position. You know, some guys you can just tell they have an uncanny ability to feel the way the defense is moving and the way their blockers are moving, the instincts of the position. He's starting to develop those. And for now, he's somebody that's going to be able to be a good kick returner. You know, they just revamped the kick return rules or the kickoff rules. So with the way it works out now, Tyrone Tracy's a pretty good example of what you want in that type of player. But however, I should point out that even though he is a developmental player, he's a project, he's 24. So you're taking a 24-year-old project, probably not going to be on this team past his rookie contract, but that kind of goes for most running backs nowadays. So again, I don't think this is a bad pick by any means. I think it's a pretty good pick. I think he fits what they want, what they need. I just personally would have rather have seen them go Dylan Laube. And then finally, in the 6th round, they take Darius Muasau, I believe is how you say his name. I do apologize if that's not correct. He's somebody that, much like Tracy, I got to after the draft had ended. So I'm not as quite familiar or intimately familiar with his tape and his name as some of these other prospects. So excuse me while I turn to my notes and do a little bit of reading here. Muasau is just kind of a high upside special teamer for now. You know, he's got the aggression, the physicality, the technique as a tackler, you know, very good form, very good mechanics, I guess you could say. He has good quickness, he's a very sudden player. However, he doesn't have great pursuit speed. He's not somebody that's going to chase down a ball carrier. He doesn't have good zone coverage instincts. He doesn't have good man coverage instincts. He's just not a good coverage player. So right now, he's kind of just a downhill linebacker, and that's fine. I don't think he's going to start for you or anything like that. I think if he makes the roster, because again, this is the 6th round, there's a chance he doesn't make the roster, but if he does, then he's a special teamer. And in the 6th round, taking a flyer on a good athlete that is pretty technically refined and at least has one aspect of his game that he can lean into, especially at the linebacker position, that's good process. I mean, this grade is pretty much based off the process for me, and I think they did a good job. So as a whole, I think the Giants did a damn fine job. You get the perfect pick in the 1st round, 2 guys on day 2 that are going to contribute right away, probably start right away. Day 3, you take some flyers on some guys with upside. None of them were crazy reaches. None of them are players that I don't see the vision with at all. Sure, maybe I would have rather have seen them take X player over Y player that they took, but, you know, that's me being a little nitpicky. I can't slam them too much for having different grades than I did. You know, that's the beauty of this of all this. They were relatively close, and that's what matters for my process of grading. So I'm going to give them an A. I thought they did a damn fine job. Again, not the perfect draft. We only had 2 of those so far, in my opinion, throughout what is this? This is the 9th one of these I've done, but pretty damn close. Pretty damn close. Didn't waste any picks. No massive reaches. No head scratchers, nothing like that. Just some good, solid selections with guys that are going to help day 1, and have upside to help even more as they grow. Just a really, really good draft. So shout out to the Giants, because I think they absolutely killed it this year.
Had a chance on the throwback.
This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder.
Wow. Using that